Hi, this is Antonia Bennett, and you're listening to Icon Fetch.
Welcome to Icon Fetch, the web's premier music interview show. Now, here's your host, Tony Peters.
Welcome to Icon Fetch. I am Tony Peters. Now, Louise Goffin is the daughter of the hit-making songwriting team of Carole King and Gerry Goffin, yet she's been able to forge her own unique path in music, beginning when she was very young, singing backup vocals on her mom's albums. Then when she was 19 years old, her debut album came out, Kid Blue, in 1979. In 82, she placed a song on the Fast Times at Ridgemont High Soundtrack. Had a hit on VH1 in 1988 with Bridge of Sighs. Took a break from music, and then more recently, she's been more active, producing the Grammy-nominated album for her mother called A Holiday Carole in 2011. And she's also shared the stage with her mom in front of a whole bunch of people last year at London's Hyde Park. And she's currently working on a new album for 2018. And we welcome to the show Louise Goffin. Louise, how are you?
I'm great.
Good to talk to you. Now, I mean, if we're looking at the trajectory of your career, what's kind of interesting is it's almost like for a while you had sort of creative bursts. You would like do a couple of albums and you kind of take a little break and do a couple albums. And more recently, you've been more focused and I would argue to say you've probably been more creative, recently than you ever have musically.
I would say that's true. And part of the reason for that is just maturity and not looking outside for other people to greenlight and give permission or, ask so many people and record companies and all the structures that used to be so set in stone, which now the playing field is way more open for artists to be expressive and get things out quickly to the public. So, all those things combined have just given me the opportunity to really be less blocked. And the truth is I was always really creative. I mean, there was a lot of stuff I did all the time that just never saw the light of day. It just didn't make it through all the normal channels. And sometimes I'd meet with producers that the record companies would set me up with, and they'd listen to things and they'd want to hire the person who had a hit background. And I'd make a record that just was way more stripped from character. And then someone would come over and I'd play them some of my demos and they go, "Whoa, why aren't you putting those out?"
Right.
And
right.
I went through that so much of my life and career. And I raised kids. One of them's going to college shortly. So, I mean, it's a time of life for me where I really just can, and so you just get to a point where you don't take no for an answer.
Right, no.
Time gets precious and you want to do the most of your time, and you don't wait around for someone to tell you, go for it. You just do it anyway.
I don't need a big production.
It's interesting because you talk about the fact that, record companies, it's kind of a good and a bad thing. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of, the sort of machine, the promotions departments and all that, or, you don't have a lot of A&R going on in the record business and that kind of thing. But at the same time, as artists, you have more freedom to kind of be able to do the albums on your own terms kind of thing. It's a lot harder because I imagine now you're doing all the work yourself kind of thing. So
I am doing all the work myself. I do have help, though. I mean, like right now I'm editing a video. I end up doing a lot of editing of videos myself, and, social media I'll do with someone else. Like they'll do some of it, and I'll just grab some of it, during the day. And it is a pretty big job, but I think that this is a description not just of me. It's like the new artist. Everyone I know is doing everything. They're They're making their little pledge videos. I shouldn't say little, but those campaigns of crowdfunding are super time-consuming. I've done 3 of them. And really, it's like a reality TV show. Your fans just want to see what you're doing behind the scenes all the time. And most of your days are spent living your life and documenting your life and then sharing your life. And people love that. It's just, you really stay up late. You put in a lot of stuff together. So, thank you for saying all that. And I appreciate that someone's noticing the creative burst. And really, there's a lot to be discovered. I mean, it was interesting for me to hear your version of my musical history because, a lot of the things I think that get through are the biggest things, which are things that were associated with my mom, Carole King, because, she's iconic and people know her name, and
sure.
it's on a bigger scale. But the fact is I relatively do. I mean, if you looked at it in percentage of my career time, it's probably like 8% with my mother, and
right.
The rest of the time,
sure.
I've done tons of things that people don't know about. There's a lot of records out there, online. In fact, tonight, one of my songs is being used in the premiere of Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce.
Yes,
tonight,
yes.
It's the premiere of, I think, the 4th season, is
yes,
it?
Yep, that's what it is.
Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, and one of my songs that I played in Hyde Park is being used in that episode. So I'm super excited about that.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, is that the kind of thing that, you put your songs out there and people, I mean, how does that go about? I've always wondered, like, how does a song of yours end up getting featured on a TV show? Or are there different kind of ways to do that kind of thing?
Well, it's a lot of times it's word of mouth and luck and timing. But really what it is it's, I'll have people who will hear about things and they'll throw it to the wall and see what sticks. They'll say, hey, we're looking for something in this scene. Do you have anything? And they'll give some description, and often they'll say kind of like this artist meets that artist. They use those as mainstream ways to communicate what they're looking for. And people will, they'll listen, they'll get thrown 10 different things. And it's really luck of the draw whether they say they want to use it or not. And they're few and far between. When you get them, you go, oh, yeah, I mean, everybody wants to be in film and TV. And actually, right now is a golden age in television because of streaming and subscription. There are so many great TV shows being made, more than ever. And it's an exciting time for musicians to, team up with other mediums for getting their music out there. So everybody wants to be on those shows, and it's highly competitive. Just like Spotify is highly competitive. I mean, Spotify has turned into what terrestrial radio used to be.
Right.
You want to get on the playlist.
Right.
Now it's with Spotify, it's all out there all the time, but no one is going to find you unless you're on one of those playlists.
Right.
And it's as competitive as it ever was. So
right.
Really, it's a time to be very creative, and then it's a time to be really assertive with getting people to know about it, because it's, the first couple of years I was starting to make a record a year and producing it and putting it out on my own, imprint label. It was, most of the work was going and just creating the music and packaging and all of that. And then I realized, oh, no one's hearing this. Nobody knows of this.
Right.
And I realized that so much of the work is after that point.
Right. Yeah. You got to trumpet what you do. You definitely got to do that. So, for sure. So.
Watching the sky turn blue.
I mean, you teamed up with the Hollywood Vampires. That's Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper. How on earth did that happen?
Yeah, that is really, it is a head scratcher. Like, how on earth did that happen? Because you could not get that to happen. You couldn't call Alice Cooper's manager and Johnny Depp's people and, you know, the Vampires and get them together in a room to do a backing vocal session.
Right.
But what happened was I was in Village Recording Studio, and I was actually working alone. That was a single where I had sent the track out to Joey Peters, and I said, I need drums on this, you know, and I had everything sent to me in the studio, and I was playing all the keyboards and all the guitars and doing the backing vocals. And I was just going to the studio, and I went upstairs, and then when I went downstairs, one of the days I was there, I saw Bob Ezra in the reception room, and I've known Bob for years because he was the very first producer that Electra Asylum put me with to meet for my first record.
Really? Okay.
He never did the record, but I went to his house. I remember I was like 17. I went to his house. I played him some songs, and the story is he called the record company and said, I'm not producing her. She's a really sweet girl and talented, and I am not going to ruin her life by putting her in the music business.
Well, Bob Ezra, and this guy's, you know, iconic. He produced the Kiss, you know, several Kiss albums. He did Pink Floyd's The Wall. He did Alice Cooper.
Gabriel.
Yeah. So he turned you down. That's interesting. All right, because he didn't want to ruin.
He was trying to be a good guy and just say, you know, she's 17, she's young now, I'm not going to do it, not going to do this, don't do this
right.
to her. And then, you know, we'd run into each other from time to time, and it was just familial. He'd go, Wheezy, hey, so this is what happened at Village. He said, Wheezy, what are you doing? And I said, I'm making this single upstairs, and I had been told by Jeff Greenberg, the owner, you can't go past this thing with a very, you know, big person in here, and nobody can go there. And then, you know, the secret was Johnny Depp was in the room. And when I saw Bob, you know, so I wasn't allowed to cross the area, but Bob said, Wheezy, hey, come on back. Let me introduce you to Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper.
Yikes.
So I went there, and I'm there with the Hollywood Vampires, and they're all so friendly. And Bob comes upstairs. He says, hey, let me hear what you're working on. And I play him Watching the Sky Turn Blue, and I have it at a slower tempo than it ended up being. He goes, hey, you know, you don't have to take my advice. I don't know anything, but I really think this could be faster. and I was like, Bob, why are you telling me this now? It's the end of the week. You know, I rented a guitar from SIR. I sent the guitar back. And he goes, I don't know, you can do what you want, but, you know, this sounds like a hit record to me, and I would speed it up, like, a lot, you know. He said, don't worry about the guitars. Guitars, we got guitars. Rock stars, we got rock stars, you know. And then he leaves, and I look at Steve Bone, who was the recording engineer, and I go, did he just say rock stars? Like, did he just offer us rock stars? And he says, I think he did.
Right.
So I said, all right, let's speed this thing up. I come downstairs at like 4 o'clock on Friday and go, hey, would you guys be willing to come upstairs and sing some really simple backing vocals and do some hand claps? And Alice kind of looked and shrugged his shoulder, and he went, sure. and then, you know, in my ignorance, because, like, I am not a real pop media follower. I've never watched a lot of TV or read a lot of magazines. And I also lived in England for 10 years, so I wasn't really watching pop culture in America.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, the Rolling Stone is there under the table, and I only found that out later, with Johnny Depp on the cover. So I could have read everything about Johnny in that article had I bothered to read it. But I actually asked them, I said, does Johnny sing?
Yeah, maybe.
and I said, I think he does. I think he does a little bit.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I said, would he want to come up too? And they said, I don't know. Go ask him. So I go up to Johnny. I said, hey, you know, Alice and Bruce and and Tom are going to come upstairs, and do you want to come? And he's like, yeah, sure. So next thing I know, I'm just walking upstairs to this recording studio, and the Hollywood vampires are following up the stairs, to the chagrin of everybody in the studio. It was like, what? I was like the Pied Piper, this petite person,
right.
with these very tall, dressed in black,
right. Right.
guys following me up the stairs, and they all got in the control room, and I had the presence of mind to call downstairs. I said, get somebody up here with an iPhone and film this right now. And they were in the control room, and, I got little bits and pieces of us singing. It was hard to get everybody in the same frame, but, it is mildly documented.
Nice. Oh, man.
And,
yeah, that's a right place at the right time kind of story going on, sure. So let me talk about, you put out The Essential Louise Goffin, Volume 1 here recently, and this is kind of cool because it's a way to kind of get caught up on what you've been doing in kind of this creative, burst that you've had over the last few years. When did the idea of that come about?
That came about. It wasn't so much, I have this brilliant idea. What happened was, in January of last year, I got the call about Hyde Park, and I was just, what? Me play in front of all those people? And I really was focused, and I had, between January and June, late June, to really get it together. One thing that became clear is it behooves me to have some record out when I'm playing in front of all those people.
Yes.
And I hadn't, I'd already put a record out. I wasn't working in the studio on anything that was going to be ready. What I had just been doing was recording some Goffin and King covers, which is something I've never done much of in my career. I did it when my father died. I felt really compelled to record some of my favorite under-the-radar songs of his. Sony Publishing had given me a recording deal, very limited recording deal, to record 3 songs of their catalog that they had on Goffin and King, because people come to them saying, hey, we want I Feel the Earth Move, and they don't own it. But they own the song, or they own the publishing on the song, but they don't own the recording from
right.
Tapestry.
Right.
And so they will, sorry, we can't give it to you. And they have to pass up these opportunities to have things used in film or advertising.
Right.
So they said, look, how great an idea would it be to have you, since, we love your voice and we love what you're doing, have you cover these songs. And then when people come to us, you can say, yeah, we've got Louise singing I Feel the Earth Move for Locomotion. And another one was You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman.
You make me feel, you make me feel, you make me feel like a natural woman.
So I recorded those 3 songs for Sony. No intention of putting them out, because really I don't want to be putting out Carole King covers. It's just, I'm too much of a writer and artist myself to be, putting myself out there as like I cover my mother's songs.
Right.
But they came out amazing. I had new songs, and I had songs from these previous CDs, and I talked to a lot of other labels, indie labels, boutique labels, and I go, what do I do? What do I put out? And I got some advice just saying, why don't you put out an essential record so that people who have never heard your stuff, can get little taster, little appetizer of the independent records you've been putting out, for the last 3 years. And you can also put the new material on, so the benefit is it's got added tracks as well.
Right.
Well, there's a single coming out shortly, and when I say shortly, I mean end of September, called Revenge.
We banish the cruelty
that I produced, and I wrote the song with Skylar Gudasz, an artist who I met when I was doing a concert that was a tribute to the band. And she had been in the Big Star band playing with them, and an artist herself, and, you know, just the greatest. Like, when she was singing 13, I was like, who is that person?
Yep.
You know?
Yep. I interviewed Chris Damey about that, and Skylar is a up-and-coming talent that I think everybody should check out as well. She's amazing, so.
Yeah, and so she came over to write a song, and we wrote this song so fast, and it was so good. I said, you know, I know you've been back to North Carolina, but, you know, I have this studio in my backyard, this little, you know, kind of tree house. Should we just put it down? It's like, yeah, sure. And you know, basically, I was just like a house on fire. What was so cool about the song is, you know, I started writing this verse on the piano, and I had written all these words in the morning, like on my iPhone, that I never thought I would use for anything. You know, they were just kind of making fun of what's happening on the news. And it, amazingly, you know, the lyrics scanned really well over the music. And then what happened is the key that her riff was in no relation whatsoever to the verse. But then this magic thing happened where when you kind of cut and paste them together, like, well, what if we went from here to here? What would happen? It suddenly sounded like the most brilliant key change you could ever think of. I was like, oh, like, we're geniuses.
That's awesome.
And why I'm so excited is what I said to you earlier about the demos that I had made for years that never came out. You know, I really feel like this is the first thing that I'm releasing that I've made in the way that I was making demos 20 years ago or more, that I would never deem them official. Like, oh, these are just the sketches. You know, we can't use these. These are the sketches. But now the sketch is the record, and it's, you know, it's a great record. So it's just a really interesting growth process.
Sure. So, well, let me ask you. So, how far along? I mean, is the album pretty much done now?
It's totally done. It's totally done.
Nice.
But here's the thing: I am not inclined to release an album, because what happens nowadays, and you know, everything's moving so quickly. Artists are trying to keep up with, well, what do you do now? What do you do now? What do you do now? Really, I mean, I come from an era where I love an album. You know, I love getting into someone's album. And even my kids, they love albums. And they go to Spotify and they don't add a single to a playlist. If they like an artist, they get the entire album and they listen to the album. And that was news to me. But I was taking a poll among 16-year-olds, and this is what they were telling me. You know, they like the albums. However, if you're up and coming and people don't know you, like if Kanye West puts out a record, he can put out the whole album. If Rihanna's putting out an album, you know, people are going to get the whole album.
Right.
If Adele's putting out an album, people get, you know, Katy Perry, all these famous people. But if people don't know who you are, you know, you're going to be discovered in stages. You're going to discover, this many people are going to discover you in spring, and that many people are going to discover you in summer. And, you know, it's going to take a couple of years for people to catch on to who you are and what you're doing. If you release an album, most of that album is not going to be heard when you release it. And, you know, while the audience is like really happy to go back and say, oh, I just discovered, like people say to me, I just discovered your album, Songs from the Mind. How come I didn't know about this? Like, how could I not know about this record?
Right.
You know, it came out 3 years ago. But the trouble with the way things are now is if you go to press, or you go to Spotify, or you go to terrestrial radio, or you go to television, or any of that, and you say, I want to play a song that I released last summer, they have no interest. They're not going to let you do it.
Right.
They're going to say, no, we only want to do something current. We don't want to, we're not going to promote something that came out last year. So this is what I've learned, and people who care about me say, don't put out a whole record. It's suicide.
Wow. Huh.
And I've even heard of artists, I can't remember who it was. Someone told me of an artist who put out a record. I think it had 8 songs on it, and afterwards said, and it was a successful artist, and said, I am never doing that again.
Wow.
So my thinking really is, I don't even think of myself anymore as just putting out music. It's like each song is it's like an episode. It's an episode of the ongoing performance art that is, my life right now. So
interesting.
It really feels like that. So there'll be a single, there'll be a video, there'll be a lyric video, there'll be behind the scenes, there'll be a tour. Each thing will be like an episode of an ongoing series. And in the same way that usually those episodes are still filming the next thing before that, you can even watch it. Well, you can't watch it yet because they're still filming that episode. It's a bit like that. Like I'm constantly playing catch up. I'm constantly going, I'm editing, Why am I editing? Well, because the editor I know is editing something else,
right, right.
And it really is it's just a lot of industriousness occurring right now, and it's super, super fun. And the fact that I'm coming to the Northeast to go on tour and bringing a whole band is also, something I haven't been able to do for the longest time. I just didn't want to go on tour and play things stripped down because, I feel like there's a perception of me that's very limited. It's like, singer-songwriter, folky, unplugged, deep and meaningful songs, all of that. That's all fine. There's nothing wrong with any of it, but it's just a small photograph of everything that I do.
Well, Louise, it's been great talking to you, and we can't wait to hear more new music from you. It sounds like you've got some singles that we'll be seeing in the next couple of months, kind of thing. We're looking forward to it. So.
Oh, thank you. It's great talking to you, Tony.
You've been listening to Icon Fetch with Tony Peters. Want more great interviews? Head on over to iconfetch.com. There you'll find every interview we've ever done, plus CD reviews, This Day in Music, and a random album of the day. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Who's Tony going to interview next? It could be you. Send us what you've got to Tony Peters, Icon Fetch, P.O. Box 292134, Dayton, Ohio, zip code 45429, or email Tony, host@iconfetch.com. Until next time, this is Joe Kelly. Have a great day.